Last year, I placed a poll on this channel asking people what their opinion was of the police. I set out 4 different categories that they could choose from: like, indifferent, dislike, or hate. In retrospect, I should have put 2 options either side of indifferent and maybe asked how many people loved the police, but somehow I doubted that such a category would be necessary. Over 20,000 people voted, and these were the results: 11% liked the police, 18% hated them, 30% were indifferent toward them, and 41% disliked them. I've no idea where the remaining 1% went. Perhaps that was lost in the automated rounding off of fractions, or maybe it can be attributed to the number of people who love the police. I also asked people to state the reasons for their chosen opinion in the comments. The 1,400 responses I received, I then extracted the most common categories of dissatisfaction. I then put the top 5 back to the vote and asked people to choose what they considered as the most significant. These are the results. They are politically motivated and self-serving. It shouldn't really be surprising that an executive branch of government funded by the state does primarily what the state wants it to do. Does anyone genuinely believe that the police's original founding purpose to serve the public still holds true today? Not even the police themselves believe this, as one of the biggest insults you can give is to call them a public servant. Serving the public is now at the bottom of a very long list of objectives that determine police priorities. Their allegiance is, firstly and foremostly, to themselves, then in equal measures to the government, left-wing fanatics, and to the press. More recently, they are allowing their policies to be dictated to them by special interest groups who want to impose their fanatical worldviews upon the rest of us. To that end, the police service is muscle for hire for any minority group that wants to silence its critics and opposition. Chief constables, promotions, new recruits, and even victims are cherry-picked by their allegiance to identity politics. The Met Police have recently announced that they want 40% of new recruits to be from black, Asian or minority backgrounds. But still, white heterosexual males who are considered as third-class citizens by the top brass flock to police work in their droves, proving that police intellect is also at an all-time low. Joining the police service these days is akin to joining a political party, because where they once policed demonstrations, they now participate in them, as well as choosing which demonstrations will continue unmolested and which will be disbanded with brute force. The bottom line is, why bother going to university to be indoctrinated with Marxist politics when you can join the police and get paid to enforce those politics? They have a bad attitude. It used to be said, if you were in trouble, find a policeman. Nowadays, if you're looking for trouble, then find a policeman. Because as far as complaint statistics go, the category that gets more mileage than any other is police incivility and impoliteness. And it's easy to see why. Almost every video on this channel demonstrates the police's unprofessional and petulant attitude. Any exchange with the public, no matter how inconsequential, is a battle the police must win. They argue bitterly with anyone who contradicts them. They accuse people who film them in the street of being terrorists and heap suspicion upon anyone who dares to question their motives and attempt to uphold their rights. As far as the police are concerned, civil rights are for criminals, and if they don't get the automatic abeyance they are accustomed to, they won't hesitate to make a malicious arrest under falsified charges by way of physical force. Whenever they arrive on the scene, you can almost guarantee that they'll make the situation worse, preferring escalation over de-escalation, provocation over investigation, and subjugation over explanation. They arrive mob-handed, hostile, aggressive, paranoid, assuming the worst of everyone, while expecting us, the public, to receive them with gratitude. I have no idea what type of training is given to officers in dealing with the public, but whatever it is, it's clearly ineffective. In my opinion, the reason the police are so hostile and confrontational is because they see politeness and mediation as a weakness. Police officers are still stuck in the 1950s mindset that a uniform is to be feared or respected, and anyone who doesn't submit to it is a criminal or a troublemaker who deserves all they get. Unfortunately, too much of the general public share this view, and by doing so, empower the police to behave at their very worst, knowing that they will always be excused. Thankfully, there is still a very active minority of people in this country that don't believe the police should suspend our civil rights whenever it takes their fancy, and nor do they believe that human decency and basic civility is a luxury that the police cannot afford. They are unaccountable. If you've ever attempted to make a complaint against the police or asked them to justify their refusal to investigate a crime, then you'll know exactly what unaccountability feels like. The police-controlled complaints process is entirely unfit for purpose, and almost everyone who uses it comes away feeling worse than when they went in. This is because the complainant's word is nearly always rejected in favour of the police's version of events, and trying to hold them to account is an exercise in futility. Officers will lie and cover for themselves and their colleagues. They will manipulate the facts, intimidate complainants, confident that, even if they're caught out, the service will close ranks on their behalf, ready to excuse away even the most abhorrent criminal behaviour as legitimate policing at best, or an honest mistake at worst. The Independent Office of Police Conduct is a thinly disguised extension of the police service, who believe that their primary purpose is to rescue the reputation of the police at any cost. This is why, statistically, you have only a 1 in 10 chance of having even a minor part of your complaint upheld. And in the wholly unlikely event you do have a complaint upheld, there are no penalties afforded by the complaints process. Instead, the officer will be subjected to management training, corporate speak for no further action. Not only are the police unaccountable to civil complaints, it seems they're above criminal complaints as well. They have one of the highest rate of drink drivers per capita of almost any profession, excluding the army. But despite this, the CPS routinely allow their crimes to go unpunished, and the service prefers that their officers take early retirement on full pension rather than suffer the insult of being sacked or prosecuted. It's this lack of accountability and their freedom to abuse their powers that attract so many spiteful individuals into police work. Lack of accountability is a fringe benefit the police believe they are entitled to for the heroic job they do of keeping the thankless public safe in their beds. They act above the law. A solicitor's training can last on average 6 years before they become competent at criminal defence and attain a practical understanding of the law. The police, on the other hand, train for just 5 months before they are given a warrant card and the powers of arrest. And bear in mind that much of the training is spent studying the la-la politics of diversity in community rather than understanding any of the 11,000 plus laws that rule this land. Nothing demonstrates the police transcendence of the law than their willful ignorance of it. Chuck a brick on this channel and you'll hit dozens of examples of this. They indulge themselves in an embarrassing display of misinterpreting laws they enforce on a daily basis with zero regard or respect for the public's civil rights. 10-year-olds playing cops and robbers in a school playground would display a better understanding of the law than most of the police officers on this channel. This is because the police don't enforce the law, they enforce their will. They don't think they need to learn the law because they're the embodiment of it. Just by putting on the uniform, they believe that they are immediately infused with the power of law, like spells out of a wizard's wand. Not that it matters, because the law is whatever they want it to be, and the majority of the public are happy to see it that way also. There's a huge contingent of authoritarians that believe the police have a right to place any conditions they want upon our freedoms in the interests of law and order. The same sort of people who believe that the police are fallible superheroes. They have a textbook understanding of the law and only chase down criminals, never telling a lie and doing a difficult job under difficult circumstances. If the police enforce anything, it's their politics, their egos, their custom and their personal vendettas. Rarely do they enforce the law. But most of the public don't know the difference between the real law and police law, and are happy maintaining the idiotic conceit that the police only act within the law. You are entitled to be that stupid, but please don't try to enforce that stupidity on the rest of us. Number 1, with 35% of the vote, they ignore serious crime and go heavy on petty and non-crime. Culling over a third of the votes, I'm sure it's unsurprising that this is the number one reason that people despise the police. A common conception held by almost everyone, it seems, but the police themselves, who refuse to acknowledge this complaint and continue unabated in their relentless pursuit of criminalising unwanted behaviour. When drawn on the subject, police apologists blame the public, stating that it's the proliferation of petty allegations that drain vital resources, as if the police are duty-bound to investigate everything that comes their way, thereby preventing them from pursuing more serious crimes. This is obvious nonsense. It's the police who choose what crimes they'll investigate, not the public, and it's also they who choose what complaints to prioritise. These days, that priority is influenced by victim characteristics rather than crime characteristics. This is why the police take on average 2 days to respond to burglaries, but will respond immediately to reports of homophobic remarks made by street preachers, remarks that the police encourage complainants to use 999 to report. Although police chiefs refuse to acknowledge their obsession with non-crimes, social media postings and hurt feelings, they're never short of stock excuses when it comes to dodging serious crime. This is always due to limited resources, the cuts, and lack of manpower. But as this channel and so many others have repeatedly demonstrated, the police can always spare a few hours from their hectic schedules to argue with the public on the street, harangue those they've taken personal affront to, and to fight back with a disproportionate show of strength in their bid to maintain their sense of power. The short answer to all this is that petty, unwanted behaviour and hurt feelings are so much easier to police than serious crime. The problem with real crime is that it's undertaken by real criminals, some of which are dangerous. And when the police are dispatching themselves 6 deep to arrest a teenager for a minor public order offence, it's fairly obvious that they'll require a virtual battalion and an armoury of weapons to go after one real criminal. And when they do, it's inevitably followed with a 6-week leave of absence to cope with the post-traumatic stress disorder of being confronted by someone who has not the least regard for their feelings. And if this isn't bad enough, it's getting worse as the new breed of social media narcissists and Marxist snowflakes are fast-tracked into the police service, probably because they see it as a far more effective way of enforcing their views on others rather than leaving badly spelled comments on Twitter. And there it is. That was the vote, and that was my opinion on the views of that vote. If you don't like them, too bad, you're probably a police officer. If you agree with them, then you're completely right, and I thank you. You are the only hope we have of preventing the police from being swallowed up entirely by the political lunacy that is infecting this country and others like a black death of stupid.